I was 13 when my family decided I was guilty without asking a single question. I didn't steal my dad's credit card. I didn't even touch it. But by sunset that day, my name had already been dragged through the house like a verdict that couldn't be appealed. My sister stood in the kitchen and said it calmly. Grace did it. No shouting. No hesitation. Just one sentence delivered with the confidence of someone who knew she would be believed. My parents didn't look at me. They didn't ask where I was. They didn't ask why. They took my phone, grounded me for the entire summer, told me I had disappointed them, and I remember standing there, 13 years old, realizing something far worse than punishment had just happened. In my family, the truth didn't matter. 3 days later, my aunt asked one question no one else did, and everything began to fall apart. Emily had always been the kind of daughter parents liked to show off. At school events, teachers shook my parents' hands and told them how lucky they were. Neighbors smiled at her like she was already someone important. Even strangers seemed to assume good things about her before she said a single word. At home, it was the same. If Emily spoke, people listened. If Emily made a mistake, it was understandable. If Emily wanted something, there was always a reason she deserved it. I wasn't treated badly. That's what made it harder to explain. I wasn't yelled at. I wasn't ignored outright. I was just managed, corrected, quietly reshaped into something easier to overlook. I learned early how to take up less space. While Emily practiced debate speeches in the living room, projecting her voice like she already owned the future, I stayed in my bedroom with a sketchbook on my knees. Drawing felt safer than talking. Paper never interrupted me. It never sighed when I took too long to explain myself. At dinner, my parents asked Emily about school first. How was debate practice? Did your teacher mention the competition? Have you thought more about colleges? Then their eyes drifted toward me, almost as an afterthought. And you, Grace? My mom would ask, already reaching for the salt. I'm fine, I'd say. That answer made things easier. For everyone else. Emily noticed all of this long before I did. She noticed how my parents' faces softened when she spoke, how their shoulders relaxed, like the world made more sense when her voice filled the room. She noticed how my words were weighed differently, how I had to prove things she was simply assumed. She learned the rules of our family quickly. Rule 1, Emily was reliable. Rule 2, I was questionable. Rule 3, when something went wrong, start with me. It wasn't written anywhere. It didn't need to be. The week before everything happened, I remember sitting at the kitchen table while Emily scrolled on her phone. Dad was searching the drawer for his credit card, muttering under his breath. Did you move it? He asked Mom. She shook her head. Emily wouldn't touch it. No one looked at me. But I felt the thought pass through the room anyway. Emily glanced up, just for a second. Our eyes met. She smiled. Not a cruel smile. Not even a smug one. It was calm, confident. That was when I should have known something was coming. Looking back now, the accusation didn't feel sudden. It felt prepared. Like a door Emily already knew how to open. Because when the receipt appeared a few days later, and my parents stood there holding proof they didn't understand, Emily didn't hesitate. She didn't ask questions. She didn't express surprise. She simply filled the silence. I think Grace did it, she said. Not maybe. Not I'm not sure. Think. That word did all the work for her. It sounded reasonable, thoughtful, concerned. And just like that, the story had a direction. I remember opening my mouth, ready to explain, ready to say anything that would slow things down. But the room had already moved on. My parents weren't angry yet. That came later. Right then, they were disappointed, and somehow, that felt worse. Emily leaned back against the counter, arms folded loosely, like the matter had already been settled. She didn't look at me again. She didn't have to. She already knew what I was about to learn the hard way. In our family, being believed mattered more than being right. The receipt appeared on a Tuesday morning. I remember that clearly because Tuesdays were usually quiet. No rushing, no surprises, just routines stacked on top of each other like they always were. That morning, my mom called my name from the kitchen. Grace, come here. Her voice wasn't sharp. That scared me more. I walked in and saw my parents standing side by side near the counter. My dad was holding a piece of paper, his brow furrowed like he was trying to solve a puzzle that offended him. My mom's arms were crossed. Emily was already there, leaning against the fridge, scrolling on her phone like she had nowhere else to be. What's going on? I asked. My dad didn't answer. He handed me the paper. It was a receipt. An electronics store I'd passed 100 times but never gone into. A date. A total. $186.42. Do you want to explain this? My mom asked. I stared at the paper, confused. Explain what? My dad exhaled slowly. This was charged to my card. I didn't buy anything, I said. The words came out fast, automatic, like my body was trying to protect me before my brain caught up. Emily looked up then. I saw her looking at headphones online, she said casually. Yesterday. I turned toward her. I was just browsing. My mom cut me off. Grace, this isn't the time to argue. I'm not arguing, I said. I'm telling you, I didn't do it. Dad rubbed his temples. The card was in the kitchen drawer. Now it's not. I felt my stomach drop. So you think I took it? I asked. No one answered. That silence told me everything. Emily slipped her phone into her pocket and tilted her head slightly, like she was trying to help. You've been wanting new headphones for weeks, she said. It makes sense. That word again. Sense. I looked at my parents, waiting for one of them to ask the obvious question. When did this happen? Where were you? Why would you risk this? Instead, my mom said, we're very disappointed in you. I didn't steal anything, I said, my voice shaking now. Please, just ask me where I was. Dad straightened. Why would your sister lie? I didn't have an answer to that, not one that mattered. Emily shrugged lightly. I didn't want to say anything, but I couldn't just ignore it. That was when I realized she wasn't accusing me. She was positioning herself, the responsible one, the honest one, the daughter who did the right thing. My mom nodded slowly, like Emily had just confirmed something she'd already suspected. Go to your room, she said to me. We'll talk about consequences later. Consequences for what? I asked. For something I didn't do? My dad's voice hardened. Enough, Grace. That was the moment I understood I wasn't being questioned. I was being sentenced. They took my phone first, then my tablet, then my laptop. You're grounded for the summer, my mom said. No friends, no going out. This is serious. The words blurred together after that. I remember standing there, my hands empty, my throat tight, trying to find the right combination of words that would make them stop and actually listen. I'm telling the truth, I said quietly. My mom shook her head. Lying only makes this worse. Emily didn't say another word. She just watched. Later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I listened to my parents talking in the living room. I can't believe she would do this, my mom said. We trusted her, my dad replied. Each sentence landed like proof of something I didn't understand how to undo. Around midnight, my door creaked open. Emily stood there in the dark, arms folded loosely, her expression unreadable. You should have thought this through, she said softly. I didn't do anything, I whispered. She tilted her head, studying me. Maybe not, she said. But you were the easier choice. Then she closed the door behind her. And that was when it hit me harder than the grounding, harder than the punishment. In my family, innocence wasn't something you proved. It was something you were granted. And I had just learned how easily it could be taken away. Being grounded wasn't the hardest part. Silence was. The house didn't feel angry after that first night. It felt sealed, like a place where something unpleasant had happened and everyone agreed not to talk about it out loud. For 3 days, no one mentioned the credit card again. My phone was gone. My door stayed closed. Meals were quiet. When I walked into the kitchen, conversations paused, then resumed once I left. Not dramatically politely, carefully, like I was fragile or contagious. Emily moved through the house like nothing had changed. She laughed with my mom while washing dishes. She sat beside my dad on the couch, helping him scroll through emails. She told stories about debate practice and upcoming competitions, her voice light and animated. No one asked her hard questions. No one watched her closely. I spent most of those days in my room, staring at the same unfinished drawing taped to my wall, a half-shaded skyline that no longer felt worth completing. I replayed the moment in the kitchen over and over again, trying to find the exact second where things had slipped out of my control. Was it when Emily spoke first? When my parents didn't interrupt her? Or when they chose disappointment over curiosity? On the third afternoon, the doorbell rang. I heard my mom's voice change instantly brighter, warmer. "Oh, Rebecca." "Hi, Aunt Rebecca." She was my mom's older sister, the kind of adult who asked follow-up questions and waited for real answers. She worked long hours, wore sharp jackets, and noticed things most people overlooked. I sat up in bed. Footsteps moved through the house. Laughter. The clink of coffee mugs. Then my mom's voice again, louder this time. "Grace is grounded." Grounded. Not Grace is upset. Not Grace is confused. Grounded. There was a pause. "For what?" Aunt Rebecca asked. I crept toward my door and pressed my ear against it. My mom sighed. She took David's credit card and made a purchase without permission. Another pause longer this time. "And you're sure?" Rebecca asked. "Yes," my mom said quickly. Emily saw her looking at items online. "Did you ask Grace what happened?" The room went quiet. I held my breath. "We didn't need to," my dad said. "The evidence is pretty clear." Rebecca didn't respond right away. Then she said calmly, "Can I see the statement?" Chairs scraped. Paper rustled. I heard my aunt hum softly, the way she did when she was concentrating. "Huh," she said. That one sound sent a strange ripple through my chest. "Huh?" my mom repeated. Rebecca didn't answer her. "What time was the charge made?" "Why does that matter?" my dad asked. "Because time always matters," Rebecca replied. I cracked my door open just enough to see into the hallway. Rebecca stood at the counter with her laptop open. The bank statement pulled up on the screen. Her finger tapped against the trackpad slowly, thoughtfully. "This charge was made at 3:41 p.m., she said. "On Monday." My mom nodded. "Yes." Rebecca looked up. "Grace, where were you at 3:41 on Monday?" Every head turned toward the hallway. Toward me. I froze. My mom frowned. "Rebecca, she's grounded." "This isn't—" I asked Grace. Rebecca said, gently but firmly. My heart pounded as I stepped forward. "I was in the school library," I said. "I had detention. Miss Carter kept attendance." Rebecca nodded like she expected that answer. Then she turned to Emily. "Didn't you leave school early that day?" she asked. "For debate prep?" Emily's smile faltered for just a second. "Yeah," she said. "But—" Rebecca held up a hand. "One moment." She typed something into her laptop, eyes scanning the screen. "The electronics store is across town," she continued. "About a 20-minute drive from your school. That would put someone leaving campus early right in the window." My mom crossed her arms. "Are you implying—" "I'm implying nothing," Rebecca said. "I'm asking questions." She looked at my dad. "Did you call the store?" "No," he said. "Why would we?" Rebecca closed her laptop slowly. "Because stores have cameras," she said. "And credit cards log more than just amounts." The air in the kitchen felt heavier now. Emily shifted her weight, suddenly very interested in the floor. Rebecca turned toward me again, her expression softening. "Grace," she said, "did anyone ask you for your side before you were punished?" I shook my head. Something hardened in her eyes, not anger, but resolve. "I'd like to make a phone call," she said. My mom opened her mouth to protest. Rebecca was already dialing. For the first time since the accusation, I felt something unfamiliar rise up inside me. Not relief, not hope. Just the quiet realization that someone finally was looking at the truth instead of stepping around it. And whatever Rebecca was about to uncover, I could feel it in my bones. The silence in our house wasn't going to survive it. Aunt Rebecca didn't leave after that phone call. That alone told me this wasn't going to be brushed aside. She paced slowly near the kitchen counter, phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and professional. She asked precise questions: store location, transaction time, whether the cardholder's ID had been checked. I didn't hear the answers, but I saw the way her jaw tightened as she listened. My mom stood frozen by the sink, arms crossed so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Dad leaned back against the wall, rubbing his forehead like this had suddenly become a headache he didn't have time for. Emily stayed quiet. That was new. Rebecca ended the call and set her phone down carefully, like it was something fragile. "They're pulling the footage," she said. "It won't take long." My mom exhaled sharply. "Rebecca, this is unnecessary. We already handled it." Rebecca looked at her. "You punished a child without asking her a single question. That's not fair," my mom snapped. "We trusted Emily, and you didn't trust Grace," Rebecca replied, evenly. The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. Dad straightened. We're not saying Grace is a bad kid, but the evidence was never reviewed. Rebecca cut in. You saw a receipt and filled in the rest. She turned to me. Grace, go sit down. I did. Not because I was told to, but because my legs suddenly felt weak. Minutes passed in thick silence. No one spoke. The clock above the stove ticked loudly, marking every second like it was counting down to something none of us wanted to face. Emily shifted in her seat. Can we just drop this? She said finally. It's not that big of a deal. Rebecca looked at her for the first time since the call. Why would you say that? She asked. Emily shrugged. Dad's card got paid off. No one was hurt. I felt something twist in my chest. No one? I asked quietly. Emily didn't look at me. I didn't mean... Rebecca held up her hand again. Stop. Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. This is exactly how harm gets minimized, she said. By pretending inconvenience is the worst outcome. My mom scoffed. So what are you suggesting? That Emily stole from us? Rebecca met her gaze. I'm suggesting we wait for facts. The doorbell rang. Every head snapped toward the front door. Dad moved first, his steps hesitant. When he opened it, a uniformed store manager stood on the porch, holding a tablet. Mr. Miller? He asked. You requested footage related to a disputed transaction. Rebecca stepped forward. That was me. They gathered around the tablet in the living room. I stood slightly behind everyone, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. The video loaded. At first it was just a wide shot of the store entrance. Customers walking in and out. Shelves lined with electronics. Then the timestamp appeared in the corner. 3:41 p.m. The camera shifted, and there she was. Emily, wearing her debate team jacket, holding Dad's credit card in her hand. I heard my mom gasp. Emily froze. The footage showed her at the counter, chatting with the cashier, completely relaxed. She glanced at her phone, smiled, and slid the card across the counter like she'd done it 100 times before. The transaction completed. The video ended. No one spoke. The silence this time wasn't polite or careful. It was stunned. Dad looked at Emily slowly, like he was seeing her for the first time. You let your sister take the blame, he said. Emily crossed her arms defensively. You always believe me. That sentence broke something. My mom's voice cracked. Emily. Why? Emily's eyes flashed with irritation. Because it was easier. You guys were already suspicious of her. I felt the words hit me like a quiet confirmation of every fear I'd had. Rebecca stepped forward. Do you understand what you did? She asked Emily. False accusations can have serious consequences. Emily rolled her eyes. She's 13. Nothing would have happened. Something did happen, Rebecca said. She lost her voice in her own family. My mom covered her mouth. Dad sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. I trusted you, he said softly. Emily's posture stiffened. You trusted me because I've never given you a reason not to. Rebecca nodded. And now you have. My mom turned toward me. For the first time since this started, she really looked at me. I'm sorry, she whispered. We should have listened. The words felt heavy, late, but real. Emily stood abruptly. So what, now I'm the villain? No, Rebecca said. You're responsible. Emily scoffed. For one mistake? For understanding the system well enough to abuse it. Rebecca replied calmly. Emily opened her mouth to argue. Rebecca didn't let her. This stops now, she said. And it doesn't end with an apology. There needs to be accountability. The room felt smaller, tighter. I sat there, silent, realizing something important. This wasn't just about the credit card anymore. It was about who my family protected. And for the first time, that protection wasn't automatically aimed at Emily. The truth had stepped into the room, and it wasn't leaving quietly. The store manager left quietly, like he didn't want to be part of what came next. The door closed behind him, and the house fell into a different kind of silence, one that felt exposed, like all the walls had been peeled back at once. My mom sat down at the dining table, hands trembling. She kept opening her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closing it again. Dad stayed on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the carpet. Emily stood near the window, arms crossed so tightly it looked like she was holding herself together. Aunt Rebecca was the only one who didn't seem unsure of where to stand. "This isn't over," she said calmly. "Not if you want this to end the right way." My mom looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means you don't pretend this didn't happen," Rebecca replied. "And you don't rush past it just because it's uncomfortable." Emily let out a sharp laugh. "So what, now I'm grounded for life?" Rebecca turned to her. "This isn't about punishment. It's about responsibility." Emily scoffed. "I already said I needed the money." "That's not an explanation," Rebecca said. "That's an excuse." I watched my sister's confidence crack, not completely, but enough to notice. She had always known how to speak in ways that softened things, twisted them just enough to land safely. This time, no one rushed to catch her. My dad finally spoke. His voice sounded older than I remembered. "Emily," he said, "you watched us punish your sister for something you did." Emily shrugged. "You didn't ask questions." That hurt more than if she'd shouted. Rebecca stepped in before my parents could respond. "This is where I need to be very clear," she said. "What happened here could have gone much further. False accusations, especially involving financial misconduct, can follow a child. School records, store reports, even legal issues if things escalate." My mom's face drained of color. "Grace is 13, Rebecca continued. "She didn't have an advocate in this house until today." I felt something tighten in my chest, not pain, not anger. Recognition. My mom turned toward me, eyes glossy. "I didn't realize." "That's the problem," Rebecca said gently. "You didn't realize because you didn't ask." My dad nodded slowly. "What should we do?" Rebecca took a breath. "First, you document what happened. Not to punish Emily, but to protect Grace. If this ever comes up again, there needs to be a clear record of the truth." Emily's head snapped up. "You're writing this down?" "Yes," Rebecca said. "Accountability leaves a paper trail." Emily opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, words failed her. My mom stood and walked over to me. She hesitated, then sat beside me on the couch. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Not just for today, for not listening." I didn't know what to say. I nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. My dad joined us, his voice steady but heavy. "We failed you, Grace. We trusted the wrong process." I swallowed hard. "I just wanted you to ask me." The simplicity of that sentence seemed to break something in him. "I know," he said. Emily shifted her weight again. "So, what happens now?" Rebecca answered before anyone else could. "Now you lose the benefit of being assumed right." Emily frowned. "That's not fair." Rebecca met her gaze. "Neither was what happened to your sister." My mom took a deep breath. "Emily, your privileges are suspended. Debate, social events. And you'll be writing an apology not just to us, but to Grace." Emily's eyes widened. "An apology letter?" "Yes," my dad said firmly. "In your own words, no excuses." Emily looked at me, then really looked at me. There was frustration there. And something else. Uncertainty. She didn't say anything. That night, my parents returned my phone. Not ceremoniously, not like a prize. Just quietly. Like they understood it had never been the issue. Later, as I lay in bed scrolling through messages I'd missed, I heard voices downstairs. Low. Serious. Rebecca's voice stood out. "This isn't about one incident," she said. "It's about a pattern." I turned my phone off and stared at the ceiling. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel small. I felt grounded. In a different way. Not punished. Anchored. I knew things wouldn't magically be fixed. Emily was still Emily. My parents were still learning how to listen. But something had shifted. The system that always worked in my sister's favor had finally been questioned. And once a system is questioned, it never fully resets. I closed my eyes, knowing the hardest part wasn't over yet. Because accountability doesn't end with the truth being revealed. It begins there. The apology didn't come right away. Emily avoided me for 2 days. She stayed in her room with the door shut, music playing just loud enough to be heard, but not loud enough for my parents to comment on it. At dinner, her chair was empty. When she did appear, she spoke only when spoken to, and even then, carefully. The house felt divided. Not loudly, not obviously, but in the way people choose where to sit. In who makes eye contact. In who speaks first. My parents hovered around me more than usual, asking if I needed anything. asking how I was feeling, asking questions they'd never asked before. How was your day, Grace? Did you want help with your homework? Are you okay? Each question landed with mixed weight. Part of me wanted to lean into it to finally take up the space I'd been shrinking myself out of for years. Another part of me felt like I was standing in the aftermath of an earthquake, waiting to see what else would collapse. On the third evening, my dad called everyone into the living room. Emily came last. She stood near the doorway, arms crossed, chin lifted like she was bracing herself. "We need to talk," my dad said. Emily sighed. "About what?" "About accountability," my mom replied. Emily's mouth tightened. "I already lost everything. Debate, my phone, my weekend plans. This isn't about losing privileges," my dad said firmly. "It's about trust." Emily laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're acting like I committed a crime," has stated against of him. Aunt Rebecca, who had stayed longer than planned, spoke up from her chair. "You committed a serious ethical violation," she said calmly. "And you let your sister suffer for it." Emily turned on her. "You don't live here." "No," Rebecca agreed. "That's why I can see this clearly." The room went still. Emily looked at my parents. "So you're just taking her side now?" My mom's voice wavered. "There aren't sides, Emily." "There are always sides," Emily shot back. "You just switched. That hurt more than I expected, because for her, fairness felt like loss." My dad stood up. "We didn't switch sides. We corrected a mistake." Emily's eyes flashed. "You humiliated me." Rebecca leaned forward slightly. "No, the truth did." Emily turned toward me then. "You happy now?" she asked. The room held its breath. I felt every old instinct rise up inside me. The urge to shrink, to stay quiet, to let the moment pass without making waves. But something in me had changed. I stood. "I'm not happy," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. I was grounded for an entire summer without being asked a single question. I was called a liar in my own house. "And you watched it happen," Emily scoffed. "You'll get over it." I shook my head. "You don't get to decide that." The words surprised even me. My parents stared. Emily looked unsettled. "You knew they'd believe you," I continued. "You knew I wouldn't be heard. That's why you did it." Emily opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she didn't have a response ready. "That's not fair," she said finally. I laughed softly, a sound that came from somewhere deep and tired. "Neither was what you did." My dad exhaled slowly. "Emily, you're going to apologize. Not because we're forcing you, but because it's necessary." Emily's jaw tightened. "And if I don't?" Rebecca answered before anyone else could. "Then this becomes a larger issue," she said. "Because refusing accountability tells us more than the mistake itself." Emily looked around the room, searching for support. She didn't find it. My mom wiped at her eyes. "We failed, Grace," she said quietly. "And we won't do it again." Emily's shoulders sagged slightly. "Something cracked. I didn't think it would go this far," she muttered. "That's the problem," Rebecca replied. "You didn't think about Grace at all." Silence stretched between us. Finally, Emily turned toward me. Her voice was quieter now, less certain. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have blamed you. It wasn't polished. It wasn't graceful. But it was real." I nodded once. "Thank you," I said. Not because everything was fixed, but because, for the first time, my voice had changed the room. That night, after everyone went to bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I thought about how easily I'd been erased, and how hard it was to step back into the story once someone else had rewritten it for you. But I also realized something important. The truth doesn't just clear your name, it exposes the systems that tried to bury it. And now that those systems were cracked, they couldn't pretend everything was normal anymore. Tomorrow wouldn't be easy. Neither would the days after that. But I wasn't invisible anymore. And that made all the difference. The apology didn't end anything. It exposed everything. The next morning, my parents didn't act like things were back to normal. There were no cheerful breakfasts, no forced smiles, no pretending the house hadn't cracked open the night before. Instead, there was paperwork. Aunt Rebecca sat at the dining table with her laptop open, stacks of printed documents beside her. My dad stood behind her, reading over her shoulder. My mom hovered near the counter, hands wrapped tightly around a mug she hadn't touched. Emily stayed upstairs. She doesn't want to come down, my mom said quietly. Rebecca nodded. That's fine. This isn't about her comfort right now. I sat on the couch, knees pulled to my chest, feeling like I was watching something much bigger than me unfold. Rebecca turned the screen toward my parents. I've documented the incident, she said. Dates, times, statements. What happened, who said what, and how it was resolved. My dad swallowed. Is that really necessary? Rebecca met his eyes. Yes, because what happened to Grace wasn't just a family disagreement. It was a failure of due process. That phrase made my mom flinch. Grace was accused of theft, Rebecca continued. She was punished without being heard. If this had gone outside the house even slightly, it could have affected her school record, her reputation, her future. My mom's voice trembled. We would never let that happen. Rebecca nodded. Intent doesn't erase impact. Emily came down the stairs then. She stopped halfway into the living room, taking in the scene, the laptop, the papers, the seriousness she wasn't used to being on the wrong side of. What is all this? She asked. Accountability, my dad said. Emily scoffed. You're acting like this is a court case. Rebecca closed the laptop and looked at her. Families don't get a pass on harm just because it happens at home. Emily's eyes flicked toward me. This is what you wanted? She asked. To turn everyone against me? The old fear stirred in my chest, but it didn't take over. No, I said. I wanted to be heard. Emily laughed bitterly. Congratulations, you are. Rebecca stood. Emily, sit down. Emily hesitated, then dropped into a chair across from me. Rebecca's voice remained calm, but there was no softness in it now. You accused your sister of a crime, she said. You watched while she was punished. You benefited from the system that believed you without question. Emily crossed her arms. I said I was sorry. Yes, Rebecca replied. And apologies matter, but so do consequences. Emily's face hardened. So what? You're going to call the police? My mom gasped. Of course not. Rebecca raised a hand. No one is calling the police, but we are making sure Grace is protected. She turned to my parents. That means written acknowledgement. That means clear boundaries. And that means if anything like this happens again, Grace has an advocate. My dad nodded slowly. Agreed. Emily looked stunned. You're choosing her. My dad shook his head. We're choosing fairness. Emily pushed back her chair. You've never treated me like this. Rebecca answered before anyone else could. Because you've never been questioned like this. Silence fell again. Emily's voice dropped. I didn't think it would matter. I stood up. Every part of me was shaking, but I didn't sit back down. It mattered when I stood in this room and no one believed me, I said. It mattered when you told me I was the easier choice. It mattered when you watched me lose my entire summer. Emily stared at me. I was 13, I continued. I didn't have power. I didn't have a voice. You did. My mom covered her mouth, tears spilling over. Emily's confidence finally broke. I didn't think you'd fight back, she whispered. The words cut deep and healed something at the same time. Rebecca exhaled slowly. That's the heart of it, she said. You relied on Grace's silence. Emily looked down at her hands. I thought being the good daughter meant I could do no wrong, she said quietly. I thought if I admitted it, everything would fall apart. My dad spoke softly. It already did, but not because of the truth. Emily's shoulders slumped. I don't know how to fix this, she said. Rebecca nodded. You don't fix it alone. You start by accepting that you're not above accountability. Emily turned to me again. I hurt you, she said. I really did. I nodded. Yes. She waited, like she expected forgiveness. I didn't give it. Not yet. I need time, I said. And I need you to understand that trust doesn't come back just because you apologized. She looked away, blinking rapidly. That's fair, she said. The room felt raw, exposed. But something important had happened. For the first time, the narrative wasn't being controlled by the loudest voice in the room. It was being shaped by the truth. Rebecca gathered her papers. This stays documented, she said. Not as a punishment, but as protection. She looked at me. Grace, if you ever feel unheard again, you call me. I nodded, my throat tight. That afternoon, my parents sat with me, just me, and asked questions they should have asked from the beginning. Where I'd been, how I'd felt, what I needed now. I answered honestly. Not carefully, not quietly, honestly, and in that moment, something shifted permanently. I wasn't just believed, I was defended. And once that line is crossed, there's no going back to silence. Things didn't magically become perfect after that. Trust doesn't work that way. The house grew quieter in the days that followed, not the heavy silence from before, but a careful one. The kind that comes when people are finally paying attention to what they say and who they say it to. My parents changed first. Not with big gestures, not with speeches, with questions. They asked where I was going before assuming. They listened all the way through instead of preparing a response halfway in. They stopped correcting my feelings and started acknowledging them. It felt strange at first, almost uncomfortable to be noticed like that. Emily kept her distance. She didn't slam doors or lash out. She just hovered on the edges of the room, unsure of where she fit now that the rules she'd relied on no longer protected her automatically. One evening, she knocked on my door. I didn't answer right away. When I finally did, she stood there holding a folded piece of paper. "It's the apology," she said quietly. "The real one. Any mated be serviking of Sevry." I took it. She didn't ask me to read it in front of her. She didn't explain herself. She just nodded and walked away. That mattered more than I expected. Aunt Rebecca left a few days later, but not before sitting down with me at the kitchen table. "What happened to you shouldn't happen to any kid," she said. "Being quiet doesn't mean being wrong." She helped my parents set boundaries, clear ones. She made sure there was documentation not to punish, but to protect. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. "You did the hardest part," she said. "You spoke when it would have been easier to disappear." School started again in the fall. No one there knew what had happened. And for once, that felt okay. I wasn't carrying the weight of a lie anymore. Emily and I weren't close after that. Maybe we never would be. But we learned how to exist in the same space without pretending everything was fine. And my parents slowly, imperfectly learned how to listen. Sometimes I think back to that day in the kitchen, to the receipt, to the way my voice had disappeared the moment someone else spoke louder. I used to think justice meant punishment. Now I know better. Justice meant being asked. It meant being heard. It meant having someone say, "Wait, let's make sure we're right." I was 13 when I learned how easily the truth can be buried. But I was also 13 when I learned something just as important. Silence isn't proof of guilt. And being believed can change the shape of your entire life. I wasn't the perfect child. I didn't need to be. I just needed someone to listen. And this time, they finally did.